I was smoothing a red tablecloth in the elementary school gym when the doors swung open and the past walked in, holding the present by the hand. Terrell Hayes, the man I loved, the man I lost, stepped under the lights with a little girl in a red dress who had my eyes. My clipboard slipped papers skated across the hardwood, and for a second I forgot how to breathe. If you've ever had your life split open in a single breath, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because I don't want to be alone for this. I'm Simone, event planner, professional fixer, the woman people call when they want perfect. Perfection was my armor. I ironed wrinkles out of tablecloths like I could iron the ache out of my chest. You know what I mean. When you keep your hands busy so your heart stays quiet. But then the girl tilted her head the exact way I tilt mine when I'm thinking. Same dimple on the left cheek, same wide brown eyes, and my knees went soft. Pattern interrupt. Heat rushed up my neck, then ice. The gym hummed with dads and glitter and lemonade, and somehow it went quiet enough that I heard the clack of beads at the ends of her braids. Terrell saw me. Recognition hit first, then something like sorrow, then the kind of shock that steals language. His fingers tightened around hers. The little girl looked up at him, then at me. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked. I crouched for the papers, but my hands wouldn't work. A name tag slid under a folding chair. Then a program smudged with frosting got stuck to my palm like a tiny, ridiculous anchor. "Let me help you," he said, already kneeling navy suit on the dusty court. The sound of his voice, lower than I remembered, steadier, pressed right into a part of me I'd tried to board up. "I've got it," I lied. Our fingers brushed, and it was like someone flipped a breaker inside my ribs. Old love has muscle memory. He picked up a sheet with trembling edges that read, "Welcome, fathers," and passed it to me like we were strangers, handing each other directions. "Simone," he said, barely above a whisper, like a prayer or an apology, I couldn't tell. "I never left," I said, and heard the tremor in my own voice. The girl stepped closer, brave and bright. "Hi, I'm Brielle, but everyone calls me Belle," she said, beads, clicking eyes, curious head tilted just so. "You planned the party right. It's really pretty." "Thank you," I managed. "I'm Miss Brooks. I planned it for you and your daddy." Pattern interrupt. My face smaller and newer, smiling up at me like we'd shared a memory. In a way we had. I held her once. 3 hours. If I was going to make it through the next 5 minutes without exploding, I needed to do my job. "You're at table 7, I said, pointing toward the front. "Coloring sheets, handprint cards. There's a photo booth later." They moved through the gym, and I watched the way she leaned into his side without thinking, the way he smoothed the bow on her dress, casual and sure. I didn't know whether to scream or sink to the floor, so I did the only thing I'm good at. I worked. I checked boxes off my list. I smiled so hard my cheeks ached. I kept inhaling like it might turn into oxygen if I just tried harder. Let me back up. Because if you're going to judge me with the whole story. If it were you, what would you have done? 9 years earlier, I was 20, juggling community college classes, front desk shifts at a hotel, and after-school art classes at a community center that smelled like tempera paint and old textbooks. He walked in on a Thursday in October, wearing a leather jacket that didn't belong in a room full of glue sticks, and then he crouched beside a third grader, struggling to draw a cat, and made the kid laugh so hard he snorted. Money wears loud clothes, but kindness whispers. I saw the whisper. We washed our hands side by side in a tiny bathroom with a busted paper towel dispenser. "Can I take you for coffee?" he asked. "Just coffee," I said. "I have homework." Coffee turned into a walk, the walk turned into midnight, midnight turned into him, tracing circles on my arm while the city went quiet and saying, "I love you." I know it's fast, but I've never been more sure of anything. I believed him. I wasn't wrong. We built a life out of cheap takeout and library books and dreams we said out loud. He told me about the family company, the expectations, the arranged future he never asked for. I told him about my mother counting dollars at her kitchen table, the little event business I could see like a blueprint when I closed my eyes. We made plans. Degree first, then a courthouse wedding, a small apartment with a decent window, a dog if the landlord allowed it. His family kept dodging dinner with me, schedule travel rain check. It stung, but love makes you patient, right up until it doesn't. One Saturday I showed up to our coffee shop early, and two people in expensive suits slid into the booth across from me like a storm front. "We represent the Hayes family," the woman said. "We need to discuss your relationship with Terrell." They were polite in the way knives are shiny. They slid photos across the table. Terrell with a woman named Camilla at charity galas and family dinners. "His engagement will be announced soon," the man added like he was reading the weather. This was a youthful distraction. A check waited in a folder. $50,000. "In exchange, you leave town, you cease contact, you never speak of this," she said, sipping an Americano like we were negotiating over the last scone. I told them to get out. I told them he loved me. They smiled. It was the kind of smile that says, "We will outlast your righteousness." 2 weeks later, a plastic stick in my bathroom turned pink. Fear and joy did a dangerous dance in my stomach. I was 21, broke, exhausted in love, and suddenly carrying a heartbeat I couldn't pretend away. I texted him to meet at the coffee shop. He never came. The suits did. "Give us the baby," they said like they were ordering off a menu. "We'll ensure she has everything. Schools, doctors, security. If you refuse, we'll prove you unfit and take her anyway." They spoke softly, but the threat sat heavy on the table like a brick. You imagine you'll flip the table. You imagine you'll be heroic. But fear is practical. It looks like rent due on the first. It feels like morning sickness that won't let you stand up at work. It sounds like your mother's breath catching when you tell her, and she says, "We'll figure it out, baby," and you can hear the tired in her bones. I wanted to fight. I also didn't know how. At a private clinic, after 20 hours of labor, I signed papers with shaking hands, while lawyers used words like clean break and closed adoption and best interests. I held my daughter for 3 hours, memorized the weight of her counted fingers and toes, kissed the soft swirl of hair at her crown. "I love you," I whispered. "I want the world for you, I'm sorry." Then a nurse took her and a door I couldn't see closed somewhere down the hall with a sound that split me in half. Back to the gym. The red dress. The beads. The dimple I could draw with my eyes closed. Belle. Not with strangers. Not gone to another state. Right here calling him daddy, and he was doing it right. The quiet way he listened. The quick way he caught a crayon rolling toward the edge of the table, the pride that pulled his mouth when she pointed at the banner she liked best. Relief braided with rage. I had been grieving in the dark while the answer lived 3 miles away. I ran the program like muscle memory. Sack races, handprint cards, snacks, a slideshow. And somehow we got to the end of the event without me breaking open in front of the PTA. When the gym finally emptied, Terrell walked over with Belle asleep on his shoulder, her cheek mashed against his shirt. He buckled her into the back seat of a sleek black car, tucked a small blanket around her, then came back to me like a man volunteering for a firing squad. "I don't even know where to start," he said. "How about why I shot back? Why you lied? Why you let them do this? Why you kept my child from me?" "I never lied to you," he said. And it wasn't defensive. It was devastated. Simone, I swear I didn't know you were pregnant. My family told me you'd moved on, that you asked them for money for an abortion, that you wanted me out of your life. When the hospital called the day she was born, I realized the abortion was a lie, but they said you'd signed away your rights and wanted nothing to do with us. I was angry at you for not telling me yourself, but then they put her in my arms, and none of that mattered anymore. She was mine. I took her home. Years later, when the story kept not adding up, I started digging. I cut my family off. I tried to find you. They told me you were gone. Twist. The one that flips your stomach and steadies your hands at the same time. We weren't enemies. We were pawns. My mom would never tell you I left, I said, stunned. She did, he insisted, and then his face changed like a puzzle piece clicked. Unless they got to her too. I told him everything. The coffee shop, ambush, the second visit to my apartment, the folder, the check, the threats, the way I signed papers with tears soaking the page until the ink bled. I told him I held Belle for 3 hours, that I kept a box of letters for birthdays I missed, that I hired a private investigator I couldn't afford, and hit wall after wall, that I had put the box in the back of my closet 3 months ago because surviving felt like forgetting, and I hated myself for both. He listened with his hands clenched on the back of a folding chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Come to dinner, he said finally. Tomorrow. She should meet you properly. We can figure the rest out. Against my fear, and completely in line with my heart, I said yes. The next evening, his house looked like a place where a kid is truly loved. Glitter in the carpet artwork on the fridge, sneakers by the door. He answered in jeans and a maroon t-shirt, hair softer without the weight of the day on it. I told her you're the nice lady from Father's Day who plans parties, he said. We'll tell her the whole truth when we decide how. Tonight is pizza. Pepperoni Belle announced, charging down the hall in mismatched socks, with extra cheese. But Daddy says nobody needs that much cheese. I always need too much cheese, I said, and she grinned like I'd passed a test. At dinner, she asked 100 questions in 5 minutes. Hands flying pepperoni peeled and eaten first, then crust, then the middle like she was working a puzzle. My birthday's in 3 months, she said. Can you plan my party? I want an art party. My throat tightened. I had dreamed of planning a birthday for her so many times I could picture the cake. I would love to, I said. We'll make it amazing. We fell into a rhythm. Thursday art club pickups, Saturday park mornings, weeknight dinners where she told us about science experiments gone wrong, and playground dramas ranked by severity. After she went to bed, Terrell made tea and we sat at the kitchen table like teammates trying to design a play without a coach. He brought out photo albums, first bath, first smile, first day of kindergarten. And I laughed and cried and let all the missing click into a timeline I could finally hold. He offered me an office space in his building so I could grow my business. I said I didn't want charity. We negotiated like stubborn people who care. 6 months free, then 75% market. I pay utilities. You've been taught to feel guilty for needing help, he said. Let me do what I should have done years ago. I let him, but there was a thing we couldn't out-organize. We have to tell her, I said one night. She loves me as Miss Brooks, but I'm her mother. Keeping that from her another week feels like lying. If it were you, would you tell an 8-year-old now, or wait for a perfect moment that never comes? Saturday morning, we sat on the patio with lemonade sweating in the heat. Belle set down her paintbrush and climbed onto the chair between us. Am I in trouble? She asked immediately. No, I said, but we need to talk about something important. Terrell started first. Sweetheart, your mom and I were very young when you were born. People with power lied to both of us and kept us apart. None of that was your fault. I took a breath that felt like stepping off a ledge. Belle, I'm your mother. I held you when you were a few hours old, and I have loved you every day since. She went very still. If you're my mom, why did you leave? Because adults who should have protected us lied, I said, steady as I could. They told me your father didn't want me. They told your father I didn't want you. I thought giving you up would give you a better life. It was the worst decision of my life. I can't get those years back. But I am here now. If you want me. Her eyes filled. Do you promise you won't leave again? I promise, I said. And it wasn't a word, it was a vow. Can I call you Mom? She asked, small and huge at the same time. I nodded, and then she was in my arms, and Terrell wiped his face with the back of his hand and blamed pollen, and we all pretended we believed him. Yeah, that happened. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Belle suggested I move in that afternoon. 8-year-old logic is clean. Moms live with their kids. We told her we'd take it one day at a time, but by sunset, I was carrying a box in laughing, because every plate in my kitchen had a memory I wasn't ready to give up crying, because I finally had a place to set them that felt like it belonged to us. It wasn't smooth sailing every day. Kids ask questions adults avoid. Were you sad on my first birthday? She asked me one night. I wrote you a letter that day, I told her, and then I pulled the box from my closet with 8 years of letters to a girl I couldn't reach. We read them together on the couch, and she put her head on my shoulder and told me which cake she would have wanted if I'd been there. Strawberry, not chocolate. Good to know. A year later, Father's Day again. I wasn't backstage with a clipboard. I was in the front row holding Terrell's hand. Belle walked onto the stage for the talent show, carrying a canvas nearly as big as she was. Hi, I'm Belle Hayes, she said into the mic. Last year I had my dad at Father's Day. This year I have both my parents, so I made a painting of my family. She pulled the cloth and there we were. 3 figures with linked hands under a sky she'd painted purple and orange because artists should show people new ways to look at things. My heart did that overfull thing that leaks out your eyes. After the applause, Terrell tugged me toward a quiet corner of the gym. Belle bounced beside him, barely containing a secret. He opened a small box and got down on one knee on that same gym floor where I'd once been unable to breathe. You made us whole, he said. Will you marry me? Belle blurted, will you marry us, because she improves every sentence she touches. I said yes. We're planning with more glitter than is probably legal. Belle is creative director, obviously. Now the part I want you to argue about in the comments, because some conversations need friction to make sparks. Closed adoptions. Powerful families who call manipulation protection. Lies told for a brand, not a child. Where is the line between doing what is best for a baby and doing what looks best for a last name? Who gets to decide the life of a newborn? The people with the money, the people with the love, or the people who actually listen when a scared 21-year-old says, "Help me," and not take her? I don't think adoption is the villain. Adoption saves lives. I think a system that calls coercion consent is the villain. I think a culture that tells poor women to be grateful when their choices are stolen is the villain. I think families who confuse legacy with control are the villain. And I think truth, stubborn, inconvenient, healing truth, is the hero even when it arrives late. Do you think that's fair? Should people who lied be cut off forever? Or is there a road back? Would you have told an 8-year-old everything at once? Or let truth come in waves so she could breathe between them? If it were you standing in a gym with a clipboard and a ghost of yourself in a red dress, what would you have done? If this story made you feel anything, anger, relief, hope, all of it stacked together, tap like so it finds someone who needs it tonight. Drop your city and your time in the comments and tell me where you stand. What should change about closed adoptions? What consequences should families face when they weaponize power? How do we make a system where a scared young mother can say, "I want help," and the world answers with support, not a pen? Subscribe for more real stories told exactly how they happened. Messy and tender and sometimes ugly, but honest. I'm Simone. I lost 8 years, but I'm here now and I intend to make every single one ahead of us count. Stay with me.